Hello everyone, this is Shooty here again. Today making another uh, Rival video. Another Rival video. Um, I just went through about an hour and a half's worth of hell trying to get my desktop. I I got a really expensive gaming PC that I just don't use very often, and it sits there on my desk collecting dust. And every time I go and turn the bad boy back on, it it it's a fucking nightmare. I'll turn it on and it's so slow. It took me an hour or so just to fucking port a fucking audio track from from my computer onto a thumb drive. It was an absolute nightmare. Um, so anyway, I the reason for doing that is I decided I was finally gonna make like a actual really good I made the official go away go away thing that plays at the end of the video. Um, so now it'll be consistent. It'll be the same thing every time I make a video. It won't be this thing where literally it's a different font or it's the letters are slightly higher than they should be. I even got the original music that used to play at the end of the track back. So that's coming back. It'll be just like the good old days. um, with that out of the way, I guess I'm gonna talk about the actual video. In the video this time around is gonna be uh, this is gonna be a Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes and Phantom Pain review. Ah! Every time without fail, I yawn. Um, so apologies to Ferrum. Ferrum. I did have an original version of this video I recorded with Ferrum, but it was so god awful that I just I felt it was just too it's really subpar even by my standards. So I'm just gonna re-record the video. Um, so I could explain. I didn't really explain anything very well at all. I was too busy like chuckling at my own jokes, and that's just dumb. Nobody likes it when people laugh at their own jokes. So, oh, fucking God. I apologize sincerely. So I decided I'm gonna re-record it. I apologize, Ferrum. Uh, it that I put you through 40 minutes worth of talking about this fucking game just for it to be thrown out. So, um, I'll begin where it always begins, and that's the story. So Ground Zero or Metal Gear Solid 5 Ground Zeroes and the Phantom Pain take place after Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker and before Metal Gear, the original Metal Gear game. Uh, Basically, after the events of Peace Walker, the UN discovers that Diamond Dog, or not Diamond Dogs, I sorry, Foxhound has their own nuke. So, of course, they're gonna want to like invest, or they think that they have a nuke or something like that. They discover the existence of Foxhound essentially, and the big big army without a that isn't like adherent to any nation, and so obviously UN wants to go and investigate this because, well, let's face it, it's kind of spooky when an army just pops up and they don't really have a nation they answer to. They just can get hired. So they're like, uh, the Foxhound gang, which consists of Snake and Miller and Huey, decide to let this inspection happen. But while the inspection's happening, Snake goes out on mission. When Snake comes back, it turns out the UN inspection was a. It turns out it was like a ruse to get a top secret Black Ops unit on to the mother base so they could destroy Foxhound. Uh, so while Snake and the gang are making their escape, they're pursued by Foxhound and what was her name? Paz jumps out of the helicopter because she's got a bomb inside her and it blows up and it puts Snake into a coma for 9 years, and that's where Ground Zeroes ends and where Phantom Pain picks up. Phantom Pain picks up 9 years after Ground Zero. Snake's been in coma, um, and now he's all fucked up, and he's reuniting with the old gang, and they're joined by Revolver Ocelot, and they're like, we're gonna go after Cypher, and it's gonna be a big revenge story. Um, and then there's stupid bullshit with parasites and a guy named Skullface, and a Metal Gear, an appearance from young Liquid Snake and Psycho Mantis, the Burning Man, who I think is Volgan. I think that's his name from Metal Gear Solid 3. Um, it's a big Hideo Kojima adventure. Um, Spoiler warning here. So the whole point of the Metal Gear Solid 5 story is it essentially explains the existence of Venom Snake. If and so for anybody who's not doesn't know, there's multiple. I'm sure everybody who knows. There's multiple snakes. There's the big boss. There is Venom Snake. There is Solid Snake, Liquid Snake, and Solidus Snake. The two that are important for this story are Big Boss and Venom Snake. Venom Snake is not actually Big Boss. A he is a body double who's been brainwashed to think he is Big Boss. Back when Snake was escaping Ground Zeroes and a thing happened, when Paz blew up, um, a medic that was on the helicopter, a nameless medic on the helicopter, took the bullet or shrapnel for Big Boss. He saved Big Boss's life, and the medic was the one who really went to a 9-year coma. And while the medic was in 9-year coma, the wonderful boys from Foxhound said, "You know what? Let's just do some goofy shit with this guy," and they made him into a Big Boss. And they're like, "Okay, now you're." And then they brainwashed him, and it's this whole convoluted plan to throw Cypher off of the real Big Boss's tail, so Big Boss can set up Outer Heaven. It basically explains uh, the real reason for this whole game. Essentially, it explains why between the events of Metal Gear and Metal Gear 2, why Big Boss dies and then comes back in the next game. At the end of Metal Gear, you kill Venom Snake, and then in Metal Gear 2, you kill Big Boss. So I know, it's Hideo Kojima does spaghetti storytelling. I'm going to criticize him more later in the video, but for now, for the purposes of this video, just understand that if you don't understand, you have to understand that Hideo Kojima's storytelling technique is very convoluted, um, and uh, it's very like out there. It's very like wild and crazy. Um, that being said, the story is probably it's widely considered amongst Metal Gear fans. Metal Gear Solid 5 is considered to be the weakest of the whole series, storytelling wise, because essentially, one, the game wasn't technically finished. There's an entire other chapter of the game that they did not put in. And secondly, I think that's about it. Really, actually, it wasn't really finished. There's a cutscene. There's a cut. You can access. You can technically access the final cutscene for the game. Uh, at the end of the game, where with the game, where well, with the real ending of the game, and the only way you can access it is if the world player, the world's, like if every player in the world got rid of their nukes. If the nuke count went to 0, it unlocks a secret ending. Luckily for us, data miners exist, so they were able to dig up the cutscenes from this ending, and they were able to post it online, so you could go and watch it anytime you want. Uh, the game's incomplete, so the story is kind of meh. In fact, I mean, even I beyond that, I find the story really just kind of dumb. Uh, and I'll get more into that later when I talk more about Hideo Kojima. I'm gonna switch over to gameplay, and that's the standout part of this game. Uh, Gameplay wise, I'm gonna argue that this is probably the best Metal Gear Solid game. Period. I don't care what Metal Gear fans have to say. Um, Gameplay wise, it this is just the most fun. There's a lot you can do, lots of weapons to uh, upgrade and purchase, and lots of different tools at the player's disposal. There is a lot, and and believe it or not, the actual gameplay doesn't even vary that much. But what makes it fun is that there's a lot of different ways the player can approach things. You could just straight up murder everybody in your path, but then you become Demon Snake, and that's kind of bad for some reason. Uh, Outside of the fact that you literally become covered, super duper covered in blood. um, so there's Demon Snake. There's the Demon Snake mechanic. There's also, of course, though, the option to passively take down your targets with tranquilizers. You can you can get guns with rubber bullets. You can, of course, interrogate lots of people. You can Fulton people. You can Fulton vehicles. You can Fulton weapons. You can Fulton cargo. You can do a lot of things in that regard. One of the big parts of this game is the base is a resource management mechanic, which is tied to essentially running Mother Base. You have to like build and upgrade Mother Base as well as build and upgrade forward operation bases. And the forward operation bases are tied to a multiplayer mechanic where players can invade each other's FOBs and steal resources, and you have the option to defend your FOB if you want to, personally. Which back when this game was really when this game was new, that was a really fun thing to do, was to like show up and like stop an enemy player from stealing your shit, and vice versa. It was fun to steal shit from other players. Um, there's the buddies are those are like kind of fun for the most part. Different buddies like D Horse, which is just a horse. um, Quiet, which is a sniper who um, she's I'm not stuttering because she's naked. I'm stuttering because I'm trying to like explain. She, you can send her to scout outposts, but you can also like command her to like shoot targets when you want her to and stuff like that. There's T Dog, which is the best boy. Um, he's really good for like basically like he's like a proximity like scout. A quiet has to have direct eye contact with targets in order to spot them. D-Dog, he like will every time he sniffs an enemy, he will uh, make you aware of their presence and let you know where their position is. Um, and then there's the walker gear, which is like the D walker actually, I think it's called, and it's dumb and I don't use it. Um, uh, so there's a lot of like going on for that. Uh, there's so much like there's a lot going on in the game, and it all is just centered around you sneaking around and like stealing shit and doing espionage. It's like the actual meat of the game, which is sneaking, um, is bare bones compared to the actual stuff that's built around the sneaking. And I think that's kind of what makes it fun, is because it allows the player to play that game how they want to rather than bottlenecking them necessarily. Especially since this is an open world game. Uh, if this was like a game with like linear levels, it would make more sense to bottleneck how the player has to approach levels, like the older Splinter Cell games. Um, but when you have an open world like this, it makes a lot more sense to build the game around essentially having multiple uh, multiple avenues of approaching a situation rather than forcing them to play it a certain way. And you can go back to missions later on, earlier missions later on in the game with your current gear, and you could reapproach missions to get better scores, which is a part of the game. The um, real quick, I'm gonna dive into the other multiplayer of the game. They had, for a very short period of time, at one point, Metal Gear Online, which was a very excellent multiplayer experience. Essentially, what it was is you had like very standard multiplayer type game modes. Like I think it was like Capture the Flag or King of the Hill, or not King of the Hill. It was like Search and Destroy, things like that. But the way it worked was like you had attackers who had non-lethal weapons, and then defenders who had lethal weapons. So that made the game a little more interesting. Uh, there was a lot of like it was a lot of fun to play with, especially with friends. Uh, it's a shame that I don't think there's really an online community for it, so they kind of like did not support that whole game mode that much, so it kind of killed it really fast. Um, but it was a lot of fun when it was out. If you can find online footage of it, I'd recommend at least watching a little bit of that so you can get an idea of what that looked like back in its heyday. Um, there was a lot of yeah, the gameplay's solid. It's a lot of fun to play. Uh, just like different, like they even thought of like weird, goofy things, like the box. You can sled with the box. Um, just a lot of like little things, and it makes it kind of fun. It doesn't feel even like the mother base stuff. It doesn't feel as tedious as you would think it would be. It's not. It's not like super intrusive on the gameplay. And it's fun when you slowly get better gear because you can do missions better and better every time. So gameplay wise, it's a definite recommend on my part. In fact, I would say the game's worth playing just for the gameplay. I don't think the story is really worth anything. But I'm also not a huge. This is I'll transition into my Hideo Kojima ranting, and I'll try not to be too long on it because I don't want to like. I'm basically at 20 minutes. Well, let's say 20 minutes into the video talking about the actual game, and I don't want to like. I don't want to like go over 20 minutes talking about Hideo Kojima. But basically, I'm not a big fan of Hideo Kojima's games or storytelling, for that matter. Um, Most of the Metal Gear games I don't like. I well, prime example of this would be Metal Gear Solid 3. I tried playing that, and it was just the most. I spent it must have been 40 minutes listening to dialogue and watching cutscenes. And it's not necessarily that I don't like an intricate story. The problem is that the story is all over the place. It wants to have these serious, deep themes, but then they do the goofy stuff, like they just do goofy, weird stuff, uh, like Dee Dee. They when you find Dee Dee, for instance, in Metal Gear Solid 5, it's this cutesy little puppy and all that, and it's like super adorable. And then you have these like soldier guys trying to act like tough boys, like, oh right, yeah, we're gonna make him a killer dog and all. I think what it would have been a little more fun is if you found Dee Dee, like maybe he's like in his more in his adolescence, and you know what I mean, like just like I don't know, this it doesn't feel, it feels like if the best way I could describe it is it feels like they shoved like a Pokemon scene into like Schindler's List. It's this really dark, political, heavy narrative going on, and then they shove like these goofy little things in. It doesn't match quite right, and I know part of that is, and I know it's like this like Japanese um, storytelling stuff, but it feels so off and weird. It's hard to like enjoy it. Um, it to me, it's kind of it's like, oh, and then they also like God. It's also coupled with, it's like listening to someone talk about something they know absolutely nothing about, uh like the famous meme, engravings do not give you a tactical advantage. That's a fucking meme that Hideo Kojima brought back from MGS3 into Metal Gear Solid 5, and it was like really annoying because it's like nobody thinks that engravings give you a tactical advantage. They just look cool. There's no, that's like such a boneheaded like statement. It feels like fucking Spock came on the deck, and and somebody had like a bobblehead on the control panel, and Spock came over and said, this bobblehead serves no purpose," and threw it in the trash can. It's like, okay, thanks, guy. So the storytelling stuff feels very disjointed. It feels like it wants to be an anime. It feels like it wants to be um, a like 1980s action film, and then it also though it wants to be like a political thriller, and the way it's, and I suppose like you could probably do that and it would work, but the way he does it in particular, I don't think it personally works. And it also, because it also ties into the fact, like I said earlier, his storytelling's like a spaghetti of like bullshit. It's like there's so much going on in the story that it's like impossible to keep up with. And this isn't like deep Skyrim lore or something like that, like a deep Elden Ring lore. It's not like this like very like esoteric um, fantasy land where it's like they have like a lot of like lore to study up on. Hideo Kojima's is just like everybody's motives are all over the place, and all of their like means to get their motives it are just jointed in many different ways. Um, it's storytelling wise, I'm just not a big fan of his work. The and same kind of goes for gameplay. Um, I'm going to admit he did better with this in Metal Gear Solid 5, but in Metal Gear Solid 3, this shit was, I thought, found really annoying. But it's like he does these like little gimmick things that they sound neat on paper, but in execution, I think I guess I'll have to say it's kind of a hit or miss thing, but it's like, for instance, in Metal Gear Solid 3, Snake has favorite foods, and if you eat those favorite foods, they'll give you more health. But if you keep eating his favorite foods, then they stop being his favorite foods, and he starts to not like them, and then they start giving you less health. And then that goes along with foods he doesn't like. If you keep making Snake eat foods he doesn't like, he actually starts to like them, and then it'll give him more health. And on paper, that sounds like a neat idea, but to me, in execution, that just kind of like gives you this whole new it gives you this whole new thing you have to balance on top of how you're gonna approach, like how you gonna, it's this new like balancing act that you have to play. Same with like the healing mechanic in that game. Metal Gear Solid 5, I think it did some of these neat things a little bit better because they actually feel like they play more into the game. So my great example is the mechanic where, so it's the shower mechanic, which is Snake gets dirty over time, and he gets covered in blood over time, and then he also can start, if you sit like in a dumpster for too long, he could collect a bad scent. And essentially what this boils down to is that when Snake gets really dirty, he starts to smell. If you, especially like the blood one, and if you start to smell, the enemy soldiers can actually smell you when you're around. So that kind of actually plays into the stealth mechanic a little bit. Um, that's a dumb gimmick, but it's also not annoying to keep up with because you do frequently return to Mother Base, and you fix this problem just simply by using the portable shower. It's not something that's hard to upkeep, whereas the medical mechanics from MGS3 and all that, they're not super hard, but they're really annoying in my opinion. I feel like those detract more from that game when it comes to that. Again, and this is not a, like a, uh, and I think and that's kind of why I guess I'll have to say when it comes to those little game mechanics, I think Hideo Kojima improved on, but in the older games, I feel like those were like a big drawback, mainly because also, uh, you have to look at too, like Metal Gear Solid 3 was on the PS2, and I believe at launch it was asymmetric. And I know they technically fixed it in Metal Gear in a second version of Metal Gear Solid 3, but I don't think it was really true third person. They just kind of changed the angle that the camera was at. So that's kind of like a pick your poison scenario. Um, I definitely feel like Metal Gear Solid 5 was, in the entire series, just like the best when it comes to gameplay, just simply because um he I think it's like he learned, like in Metal Gear Solid 4, to use a more natural third person over the shoulder view as opposed to that isometric bullshit. Um and then on top of that, he blended in some of the trends that were coming around, which was like open world and um resource management. I guess you could consider, like in Metal Gear Solid 3 had some resource management, but this is like more of a um I don't want to say like I don't want to say like Minecraft, but it's like a Sim City resource management. I guess you could say it's a passive resource management that happens in the background and that you're not actually actively engaged in at all times, as opposed to some of the other stuff. The other like Metal Gear Solid 3 probably acts strictly more like a survival game by comparison. Um, but overall, I think it's that's kind of like something I feel like Metal Gear Solid 5 does way better over the other games. Um, I guess that's kind of like it. I got the rant done in about the same amount of time it took me to talk about gameplay and this story. Um, I would recommend Metal Gear Solid 5, and just like for the gameplay, I don't think the story's all that great. It's kind of It's just kind of dumb. I mean, it's interesting because it's esoteric. It's very weird. It gets really odd, and uh, it just does these different things that you don't normally see. It likes to act like it's like it like kind of has this facade of being like a modern military esque type game, but then under the hood it's actually got some weird stuff going on that separates it from the rest. Uh, but it comes with the heavy anecdote that it's a super duper weird, convoluted mess of a story. So yeah, I would recommend gameplay. I don't think the story is all that great. Um, I I guess that's really it. The um, yeah, I guess that's it. I just don't have that much else to say about it. It's an okay game. Okay game. I would recommend it. I keep talking in circles. um, Next video might come out sooner than you think. I'm gonna probably do a video on console wars because I don't have to record footage for that. Anyway, take care. Goodbye.